Good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you to our Winter Career Week panel. This is our Human Resources Management/Management panel. We want to welcome, first of all, our 4 all-star volunteers panelists who have graciously volunteered We'd like to welcome Lynette, Chris, Thomas, and Nick to our panel. We also wanted to welcome our students who are here live on this call, as well as our faculty, both full-time and part-time. We are going to talk about what the field looks like, experience on the records, and talk about where perhaps students could best form some skills right now in their career or in their education for a future career. Without further ado, let us begin. Let's have a conversation. I'd like to start with Lynette. Lynette, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Can you describe your organization that you represent and the position that you work?
I'd be happy to, and thanks for the opportunity, Nicholas. So I work for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada. I've been working in the federal public service in human resources for over 15 years, and with a number of different federal departments with varying but nonetheless all very interesting mandates. A little bit about DFO and what we do. Well, living in Canada, we know that we have an abundance of freshwater, marine, and coastal areas that are ecologically diverse and economically significant. So DFO and the Canadian Coast Guard really manage Canada's fisheries. And we safeguard the waters by sustainably managing fisheries and aquaculture, working with fishers at coastal and Indigenous communities to enable their continued prosperity from fish and seafood, ensuring that Canada's oceans and other aquatic ecosystems are protected from negative impacts, ensuring commercial vessels and recreational boaters can safely navigate waters, and being there to save lives, and protecting our environment when emergencies arise. So our organization spans across 400 locations across Canada. So substantively, I'm the Regional Director of Human Resources here in the Maritimes region. I'm currently on assignment as the Director of Corporate and Enterprise Staffing, and I think one of the benefits of the pandemic for many of us has been virtual work. So I've been fortunate enough to occupy this position that's typically based out of Ottawa. So in this role, I really provide a national lead on shaping the staffing system to ensure that we have a diverse and inclusive workforce at a program-wide level within the organization, and subsequently monitoring the health of our staffing system from coast to coast. So DFO, as I said, is a large decentralized organization. So each regional HR team reports into their respective senior management. So talent acquisition and supporting that unionized work environment and operating within the legislation and policies that go along to govern people management within DFO and the federal public service. So I think in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you, Lynette, for joining us here this afternoon for this conversation and bringing your extensive HR experience to this. So thank you for that. I'm going to turn it over to Chris. We're just introducing one another. We're getting to know where we're at, where we're working. So Chris, talk to us about you. What's the organization that you represent here today, your position, and something exciting about that?
Great. Thanks, Nick. So I currently work at Dalhousie University, but before joining Dal a few years ago, I actually worked at the Mount for about 5 years and spent kind of a big chunk of my time there. So it's really great to be, I guess, virtually back on campus and to be part of the Mount community. It's a place that, I've really enjoyed being part of, and, I really appreciate having the opportunity to come back. So much like the Mount, Dalhousie is obviously, a post-secondary institution, and it would be the largest university by a number of measures in Atlantic Canada. We have about 19,500 students now, and about 6,000 employees. and those employees would be working in an incredibly broad range of different areas, from faculty members, part-time instructors, custodians that clean offices, people that work in the admissions office, registration, student life, communications. I kind of like to call the university a small village because we really hire people to do almost everything. And to support those 6,000 employees across about 5 different unions and a number of non-union employee groups, we have a team of 50 people that work in the Dal HR department. And within that group, my role is the Director of Employee Experience, which is a team of 15 people that supports the employee relations, so our labor negotiations and other employee relations issues, recruitment and retention, the professional development and organizational health and wellness for our non-union or our non-faculty employees, so people who aren't in faculty positions who I normally work with. And really what we try to do in that role, working with our unions, is to support employees and build career development across the employee life cycle, from that hiring and onboarding period through career development, and then ultimately transitioning into retirement. Much like Lynette, working through COVID has given us a whole new set of interesting challenges over the past year as we've transitioned our entire workforce to primarily working remotely and dealing with the interesting challenges that that's created in people's work lives, like having your children at home for large periods of the past year, and people kind of managing other kind of interesting complexities of the pandemic, and now thankfully starting to think about what it means to begin returning to campus in a way that reminds us of some of the learnings of how we can actually make remote working an effective part of what HR does. So I think that's a bit of an overview of me and what I do.
Well, thank you, Chris, and campus right now. We're happy that we can have some representation from the Mount. So thank you. Welcome. Thomas, my friend.
How are
it's
ya?
Nice to see you. You're part of our panel. Good, good. Let's talk about you. Not many people know who you are, but they will. The work that you do and the position.
Yeah, so I work with KBRS, or Meridia Recruitment, formerly known as Knightsbridge Robertson Surrett. So I guess if you kind of put us all the different activities that we do in kind of one bucket, I would call it human capital solutions. So our core business is recruiting, obviously. We do a lot within executive search, so that's C-level searches, director, vice presidents. We do a lot on the academic side, partnering with a lot of the universities and colleges. And then we also have Meridia Recruitment, which we class as contingency. So a lot of the positions we work on there are more kind of mid to senior level, very technical in nature, partnering in a variety of different markets, different industries across Canada and the United States. And then the other kind of services that we provide are HR consulting, a number of different seminars and coaching within that. And we also do career transition. So if individuals have been laid off or employers lay off a group of individuals, we kind of help them find their next opportunity and kind of guide them through that process. As far as my role at the firm, so I'm a partner. I lead our US division. So our US division focuses exclusively on architecture, engineering, and construction. And it's actually based out of Halifax, but a lot of it's remotely, and we travel down as needed. A lot of what I do is business development, strumming up new clients across the United States. I also do a lot of kind of mentoring to the new account managers, recruiting, obviously, and more strategic planning, I would say. But yeah, that's a kind of a high level of what we do and my role, I would say.
Thank you for that. And welcome to the panel. We're happy that you were here and to bring that executive search and US context. So thank you for that, Thomas. Looking forward to it. Nick, we share a similar name. The
yes,
bar
we do.
is high, my friend.
How exciting.
Look at this. Welcome to the panel. We're excited to have you here. And talk to us a little bit about yourself, the organization that you represent, and the position that you are currently employed in.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks for having me. Nice to meet everybody else on the panel as well. I actually work and have worked for several years in community development here in the Truro area. My current role is Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Colchester. So I'll separate this into two. So just a really brief overview of what Big Brothers Big Sisters does. For anybody not familiar, is we match children and youth that face added adversity in their day-to-day lives with adult volunteer mentors, and over time they build a developmental relationship, and the research indicates that they have more opportunity to grow up and succeed and to thrive, and therefore contribute to their local society. So in my work with Big Brothers Big Sisters, I do lead the local organization here, which is its own society and led by a board of directors. So anything from the fiscal management to the HR to the marketing to the program management and oversight of the day-to-day operations. And also in my work, I'm a member of the National Strategy and Vision Committee. So that's really looking at, how we're shaping Big Brothers Big Sisters in the decades to come. And there are Big Brothers Big Sisters agencies across Canada and internationally, actually. So before I took this role, I also worked in community development here in Truro. If you've ever driven past Truro on the highway there and saw that big multicolored building, the Rathleson Community Center, I was the director of events and partnerships with that center for over 5 years, from when it opened in 2013 to right up until I took the role with Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I was charged with attracting and securing and managing some of Atlantic Canada's biggest events. So from Sportsnet's Grand Slam of Curling in 2015 and 2018 to Hockey Canada's World Junior A Challenge in 2017. And one of my last projects was actually participating on the big committee to bring the Women's World Hockey Championships to Nova Scotia, which was set to come here last year and will hopefully be executed here in the coming months. And then a number of private events and concerts. And through that work, I also founded Events Truro Colchester, which is the sport tourism group here in the Central Nova Scotia region that's charged with securing and attracting events. That's it. Is that good enough, Nick?
Wow, thank you for that, Nick, and welcome to the panel. Hey, Nick, that's awesome.
Thank you, sir.
I'm just looking at our all-star panel here, and I'm seeing that we have representation from government to nonprofit to higher education to private industry. This is fantastic. So let's continue talking about you. I want to learn more about you. I'll start this with Chris. Can you talk to us? We have several students here, how your education, your experience led you to your current position. And let me ask you this, are you doing what you originally set out to do in your career?
Great question. Totally not. And I'm sure most people would have the same answer. I think, and as we kind of work through this, I think that's a key message, that expecting that everything's going to play out exactly as you expect and setting out a career path that you're going to follow to the T for your entire life is, a bit of a fool's errand. So I think it's a key thing to keep an open mind. And I think what I would stress is, focus on some of the key things that are important to being successful in your career, which I would say are, be passionate about the work that you do, find things that continue to challenge you, and make sure that you can actually be happy, at work. And if you can check those 3 boxes, then I think you'll be okay, kind of no matter where your kind of career takes you. But in terms of the question, on the education side, I did my undergraduate, and then from my undergraduate, I went and immediately did a master's of industrial relations at Queen's. And that was a really useful thing in terms of my career, because it was, a degree that was, specialized and kind of helped kind of clearly designate that I had a background and an interest and aptitude, particularly on the labor relations side of HR. And I think kind of people are kind of looking at what you do after an undergrad, thinking about some form of specialization or advanced education, whether that's a master's, a professional designation, some of the more micro-credentialing that's coming forward. I think that's a really good thing to be doing early in your career to help differentiating yourself as a candidate and beginning to kind of get some specialized skills. In terms of experience, and I was lucky. I had an opportunity to join the Mount, actually to fill in on a parental leave for a year. It was a great opportunity to kind of get into the university sector, do some collective bargaining and labor relations, particularly with faculty. And again, in terms of that sort of differentiating yourself as a candidate, I was kind of able to kind of set off on a career where I kind of specialized in the post-secondary education sector and have now worked, at the Mount, Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and now at Dalhousie. And I think that's something you'll see, particularly on the HR side, that a lot of employers are looking for industry-specific experience. If you're in the healthcare sector, people like to hire people that have healthcare backgrounds. If you're in education, they like HR people that have an education background. So kind of getting into an industry that you're really connected to and that you have a passion for, is a great way to kind of continue to build your career, because you can become a bit of a specialist in dealing with, the HR and managerial challenges that are unique and special to that industry.
Well, thank you for that, Chris. And thank you for sharing with us the many paths to get to the position that you are in today. So continuing on this topic of finding more about our panelist, Thomas, I ask you the same question. Talk to our students about how your education, your experiences have sort of the twists and turns of the road have brought you to where you are today and all of your successes, as well as, are you where you, in terms of not just the position, but the area set out to do that?
I would say I never set out to be a recruiter. I can tell you that. It's kind of it's an industry that you definitely fall into, but I'm very happy that I'm here. For myself, I kind of have a unique background in that I was actually an Army officer way back when, and I went to Royal Military College of Canada, and I think it was a really, really good experience because I think it provided me with a bit of a foundation as far as managerial leadership skills. And good values that I still take today. After that, I decided I wanted to get out after 7 years and do something different. So then I attended St. Mary's. I know it's a competing school, but have to reference it, and did my MBA. And I think it was also a good place to be for me because I came from more of a generalist background. So it gave me that business foundation in touching all the different topics and a good understanding. And then I think the pivot point was I got an opportunity to work for a startup in Toronto. So it was a recruitment startup that specialized in IT recruiting. And that was a really, really valuable experience. I think it instilled the hard work that's necessary in kind of starting something from the ground up. And that startup mentality, and it also got my feet wet as far as recruiting and maybe learn extremely fast and kind of jump in the deep end. So I think that was important. And then I've always kind of admired KBRS and had an opportunity to join the organization and came back to Nova Scotia. And it's been great since. And I think a lot of it's led to me to this point in flexing those managerial skills as we build our team and be able to kind of provide that mentorship to our team. I think it's my background has really helped. And like I said, especially starting a new division, it's a couple of years old now, but I think having that startup experience has really kind of helped me kind of propel this quicker than if I came from maybe a larger organization.
Thank you, Thomas. We're breaking all the rules here this afternoon. Dalhousie, St. Mary's. We all know the Mount, though. The Mount's the business school to go to. Thank you for that, Thomas. That is awesome. Nick, let me turn this over to you. Talk to us about the path that you have taken. Was it your education? Was it your experience that led you to your current position? And are you doing what you had originally set out to do?
It's a really good question, Nick. So one thing that comes to mind, I actually went to NSCC for business before. I did the 2 and 2-year program at the Mount. And I look back at my portfolio when I was at NSCC the other day. And one of the things I'd outlined as a long-term career goal was to become an instructor at NSCC And I actually instruct a course right now, a marketing course in community recreation. So I guess I checked one of my boxes for when I look at what I wanted to accomplish in my career. But I really don't think that, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And I think that for me, I found a few things that I'm really passionate about. And I've really learned what my value is. I've learned where my strengths are. So I just try my best to put myself into positions where I can find opportunities to let me play to my strengths. So where there's a mutual benefit, where I could be bringing something that an organization needs, and where I can get some fulfillment and learn some new skills too. So that's really how I try to approach when I look at these new opportunities now is, does it fit within something I'm passionate about? And am I going to be a strong asset? You know, if I look at what my values are and look at what my strengths are and what the organization needs. So I don't think I'm ever going to define my career by one role that I'm in. I think I look at it more like projects that I'm involved with. And you know what I can get out of a project and what an organization can get out of me and why I might be the best fit at the time. So yeah, I don't know if that's worth anything, but that's my reflective answer.
Thank you for that, Nick. That's worth a lot. Thank you for sharing that with our students. So we are representing the Mount, Dalhousie, St. Mary's, NSCC. We turn this now over to Lynette. Talk to us about your education.
Right.
Talk to us about your experiences. Hey.
Well, firstly, I want to share with you guys that I do have a CPHR designation. And the reason I want to share that is I'd like to congratulate Mount St. Vincent on their most recent accreditation with CPHR Nova Scotia. So just to put in a plug there, I'm sure many of the students on the line today are already aware that graduates of the BBA in Strategic HR Management may be eligible to apply for a waiver for the National Knowledge Exam, the NKE. And that's really the academic exam that assesses your understanding of the CPHR competency framework. So with a successful waiver application, you can become a CPHR candidate and are one step closer to receiving your CPHR designation. So congratulations to the Mount. I actually have a Bachelor of Commerce degree, but I'm going to try to right everybody else's wrongs and say I did go to the Mount for 1 year. I did a year of the BPR program, but I did end up going to St. Mary's to finish my degree. And really for me, and in the role that I'm doing, that's having a bachelor's degree is a requirement for entry into the HR advisor, HR business partner, occupational group within the federal public service. So, you know, kudos to all the students on the line here who are pursuing that type, their BBA. So as it relates to experience, and I think this kind of builds on some of the comments that Nick Sharpe has already shared with us, but one thing that I feel strongly about is the value of lifelong learning, and that learning doesn't necessarily translate, like for me, to a promotion or an increase in pay. So for example, while I was working full-time, I pursued a master's in public administration at Dalhousie, and it wasn't going to translate into a raise or a promotion for me, but I felt that developing my skills, developing my knowledge really left me in a better position to manage the variety of workplace situations and subsequently make me a better leader. So I think as those leadership skills grew, I was able to take on new projects, new assignments that would build my repertoire of experiences and would really just help me grow my career. So, you know, another piece that I took away from Nick was his mention about his passion. And I guess to build on that, my career goal was really to have an impact and contribute to an organization in a way that makes employees and management feel valued and engaged in the workplace. And, you know, where the organization really fosters a culture of physical and psychological health and safety, and where the workplace is inclusive and diverse. So when I think back to when I was in university at St. Mary's in a human resources management class, you know, at that time I was actually pursuing a major in accounting. And I thought to myself, you know, I wanted to be a leader in an organization that treats people with integrity and respect. And I think that's really what actually drew me to a career in HR. I had particular interest in organizational culture and engagement, you know, leadership development and acquiring the right talent at the right time. So, you know, I certainly didn't have in mind that I would one day be a director of corporate and enterprise staffing, but I wanted to have impact. And, you know, I feel like I like what I do, you know, and I feel that I have impact, not because of the position that I hold, but I think that there's real leaders at all levels of the organization. And it's how we interact with those around us, asking questions like why, helping our colleagues understand, and, you know, really contributing to our corporate and social responsibility that makes us leaders and that has an impact. So, you know, I think I could be working in an entry level position, and although my scope would be smaller, my day-to-day actions to contribute to the, you know, that shared responsibility of an inclusive and respectful workplace. And, you know, I didn't necessarily start in management either. After graduating, I think I wrote like my last exam on Thursday. I started as a learning center coordinator with Health Canada, and, you know, really at entry level, and just continued to work my way up the organization, just taking on roles with increased responsibility. So that's kind of my story.
Wow, thank you for that, Lynette. And if there's something I can glean from that, it's that there are different ways of coming at the profession, that there's not a straight line trajectory. So thank you for that. And I promise students on this call and faculty, Lynette and I did not have a conversation, but as you know, we did receive CPHR designation accreditation, and I am going to talk a little bit about that at the end, but we are excited about that. I've championed that, and we're thrilled. I'm going to pass this over to Thomas before I get into any more trouble. Thomas, help me here. We have students here that are learning a lot in their classes. They're taking a lot of the prerequisite courses. Now they're perhaps focusing on a major. A number of students in this call here, they're in HR or management major. What are the skills? It's all about skills. So beyond knowledge, what are the skills that you see that is needed to manage organizations today?
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest aspect that I can see as a manager, especially in now, is that the environment is super dynamic, very fast paced. So you have to be okay with that and dealing with change. That's extremely important. And I also think, especially with everything going on, you have to be very compassionate in your leadership. You have to understand that not everyone's going to be motivated by certain things, right? Everyone's motivated by different aspects, whether that's compensation, whether that's position, whether that's work-life balance, lots of different aspects, right? So you really, when you're managing a team, you have to really find out what that is to get the best out of people. And I just think I go back to my military days and thinking about the foundation of leadership and management. I think leading by example is just so important, even in the business world. It's demonstrating that you have the qualities and you uphold the values that you want to see in your people. So I think that's extremely important. But yeah, that's what I would say for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Turn over to Nick. Talk to us about the skills that you see as being important to help manage organizations in this day and age.
What a relevant and timely question. I think Thomas hit on something that I think about a lot, and that's the willingness to change. I think that if there's anything we've learned, in the last year, it was, came out of the woodworks really quickly what organizations were quick to adapt and to succeed through the last year, and what some of them, how some of them struggled a little more. And I think it goes back to what their relationship with change was as an organization long before last March. So I now think of that as an actual skill, not just willingness to change, but I suppose an embracing of change. So just to give an example, I think that if we don't come into work every day with asking the question, how can we do something better? How can we make something better? Then we're not going to have that skill to be able to adapt and to embrace that change. As soon as we come in and stop asking the question if something can be done better, because quite frankly, life is continuous improvement. There's always a better way to do something. And I think it's really important to always be in that mindset. And I do think that's an actual skill that you have to develop over time. I also think when you talk about skills for leadership, I think the skill of empowering others is really important. That's what I've learned in my experience anyway, is that if you can get a staff team on board with a shared vision and mission, whether it's a nonprofit like us or a for-profit enterprise, and then really empower everyone on the team to be decision makers, I think that's everything. I think that's going to impact performance so much. I think it's going to change staff at all levels of your organization, from thinking about the tasks that they have to do to thinking about the goals they want to accomplish. And I think that that's going to change the productivity of the whole organization. So I think those are two key ones for me that I think about a lot, is, being able to empower and engage a team and to embrace change for the betterment of the organization.
Nick, that was excellent. If there's anything we've learned in this era, this year of COVID and pandemic, is everything is subject to change. It's tentative. So thank you for sharing that and being resilient in those leadership skills. Lynette, let me talk to you about this. What do you see as being important skills to lead organizations today?
Thanks, Nicholas. So I really liked Thomas's message about compassionate leadership and modeling leadership behavior. I really do think that empathetic leadership is about having the skills and the tools to deal with a variety of workplace situations. And I feel like I have a couple messages around this question. And, in the federal public service, for example, our chief human resources officer has identified 6 key leadership competencies. So all of our executives are assessed on these competencies. And I see this more and more being extrapolated to those managerial and supervisory levels. And that's about, holding integrity and respect. And, most importantly, I think it's about creating a workplace that's diverse, that's inclusive, creating vision and strategy, and being able to articulate that big picture and translate it into a message that's understandable, promoting innovation and guiding change, mobilizing people, how you're going to lead your team, achieving those results with your team, and really collaborating with partners and stakeholders. But, one message that I think I have around that is I don't necessarily think that we're all superstars in every area either. I think it's our strengths in certain areas that naturally mean weaknesses in others. And I think it's important to develop that spirit of continuous learning. And to me, self-reflection is an important part of that. So, I think back to maybe some theoretical points on this that I think you may have covered in your classes, but, the OECD had prepared a concept note on the skills that would be needed for 2030, and they distinguished between 3 types of skills. So that cognitive and metacognitive skills, which include the critical thinking, creative thinking, learning to learn, and self-regulation, our social and emotional skills, so empathy, self-efficacy, responsibility and collaboration, and practical and physical skills, so including, you know, using new information and communication technology devices. So, you know, I think that's just supported by the changing prevalence of the types of tasks required for work over time. And, you know, we're definitely in an era where there's less and less or there's more need for non-routine analytical and interpersonal skills, while routine cognitive and routine and non-routine manual work has really plummeted. So I think all of that goes to say that being creative and critical thinking are what are really needed to find solutions to complex problems. And, you know, I also think that jobs that require the ability to influence, creativity, data analytics, the use of artificial intelligence will shape not only the workforce of the future, but HR in the future.
Thank you, Lynette. We've been talking about this in our HR management class, as well as being able to decipher, process, and evaluate information on our own. So critical thinking is huge. So thank you for all of those important skills. And yeah, thank you for raising that report from the OECD. Chris, I haven't forgotten about you. Let's talk to you. What do you see as being very important HR management skills for leading organization in the day that we live in?
For sure. And I think, you know, a lot of the points made kind of hone in on what I think is really kind of critical when you think about how people find success in their careers and what makes someone successful, which is, you know, it's not just being the smartest person or the person that works the hardest. There's sort of a well-rounded kind of combination of skill sets that are required to be successful. And a lot of those have been covered in terms of, particularly around sort of emotional intelligence, empathy, the ability to empower others, the ability to really think critically and strategically. But the one thing I want to also highlight that I think is becoming more and more important is sort of cultural competency. And Lynette mentioned sort of EDI as a major objective for many organizations, and certainly at Dalhousie, we're continuing to become more diverse and have a more complex sort of cultural environment that we work in. And I think, you know, for anyone to lead in sort of today's age, having strong cultural competency is a key skill that's part of being a well-rounded leader that encompasses all the things that everyone's talked about. To talk specifically about HR, I think, you know, what I like to kind of communicate to people is, you know, I think people that choose HR as a profession are kind of almost, you know, starting kind of from a bogey position, because there's a certain stereotype that exists about your traditional HR practitioner. And, you know, I think people see people who, or think of someone who is, you know, there to apply rules or to simply kind of enforce, you know, certain policies. And oftentimes people don't look to HR professionals as people who are really there to influence and move forward the strategic direction of an organization. So I think to be effective HR practitioners kind of in today's age, the first thing you need to think about is moving past the stereotype of HR and really focusing on how people in our field are key kind of leaders of the business acumen of an organization and are key drivers of strategy. And in particular, you know, we're the connectors that bring together the mission and strategy of the organization with the employee experience of the people that work there. And so really trying to break down the barriers of what we think HR is and kind of position and force yourself, you know, into the C-suite and into being kind of leaders and influencers is a key skill that people have that have been successful in the field.
Well, thank you, Chris. And touching on the topic that you there briefly about the soft skills, being change makers, influencers, so key. And we've emphasized that in our HR curriculum here as well. So thank you for embodying that and speaking to that. I'm going to switch to another question. Now that we have been introduced and we've talked in the skills that you see as being important, I want to now turn our attention to our students. So we have 38 students on this call, and we are excited about that. And a number of them are curious about deciding what career to pursue. So I'm going to ask Nick to start our discussion here on this. Students are struggling when deciding on what career to pursue. That's normal. But what advice would you give a young person who cannot decide on a specific career path?
I think, again, it goes back, for me, it goes back to figuring out what you're really passionate about. So my quick answer to that is try everything. Go out and try new experiences, volunteer, join board of directors, just get engaged with your community and try to figure out what you really have a spark for, but also what your strengths are, right? So I think that for me, I always wanted to be playing to my strengths and put myself in a position where I was able to play to my strengths. But I think that you should be planting seeds every single day, right? When I was working in event development, I would be always juggling a handful of opportunities, knowing that one, if any, was going to come to fruition. So I think that's the same way you should approach your career, is that you should always be planting as many seeds as possible, just so that you give yourself lots of opportunities down the road as you try to figure out what it is exactly you want to do. And I also don't think you need to think too far ahead. Again, for me, I don't really, I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm trying to figure out the next 30 years of my life. I would much rather look at what I have to offer right now and look at what projects I want to be involved with and what I can make the most impact with. And that's how I like to approach it anyway.
I love that youthful enthusiasm of trying everything and not being afraid to make mistakes. So thank you for giving our students that invitation to do it. Nick, it's that's awesome. Thank you. Lynette, same question to you. Some of our students, they're not quite sure yet about what career to pursue. So what advice would you give to a young person who cannot quite yet put their finger on what they want to do as?
Absolutely. And I think, my message might have some similar underpinnings as Nick's as well, but it's really about starting to build your experiences. If you're unsure, try something out. And it might open doors and allow you to start building your network. And the other piece is to, sometimes when we pursue, one educational route, it may not be where we end up professionally as well. And that's okay. So, when I finished my degree and I started working as a learning center coordinator, I didn't picture that work to be what I wanted to do. But I knew at the time it would be a door into a really rewarding career in human resources. And, to me, it was about putting that 110% into everything I did and taking each day as a learning opportunity and volunteering on committees like, Nick referred to participating in boards and whatnot. And it's really that opportunity to be on those committees, to volunteer on projects. I think it's a lot easier to, let's say, quote unquote, decide after having tried out a few things. So I think taking, these opportunities as a place to get, to listen to those that were around me and to really start to ask questions like, what did they like and dislike about their jobs and their careers? And I think too, I'd be remiss to say that the pandemic hasn't also completely changed the way that we recruit. So I can only imagine being a student preparing to graduate and, having to look for work in a completely different way than we have done in, the previous years. So I really think that speaks a lot to how they'll be icebreakers in the ways that our students now will be pursuing their careers. So I think organizations too that weren't always using social media and other online platforms are doing so more so now. I know even in our organization, we're hiring people following an online test and some web-based interviews that we've never even met in person and who've been working for us for 6 or 11 months. So again, I guess it just, I would suggest keep your doors open. I think, your education is just one, ticket into a bright future ahead of everybody. So I think it's just, going to require different skills and reaching out, being savvy and communicating with organizations what individuals have to offer, and just trying out those experiences and paving your way down that way.
Thank you, Lynette. That's so appreciated. Still want to keep on the same vein of question, and Chris, perhaps you could build on, add to what Lynette has brilliantly offered here, but we're talking with students here on this call, and they're looking for some advice that you would give for them who they're just not quite sure what their next step is for a career. So what would be your insight?
For sure. I think, I would reiterate a lot of what Lynette said, and I would say that I don't think, there's ever been a time where it's as easy to kind of change jobs and occupations. There's a lot of changes happening in the world of credentialing that make it a lot easier to gain new skills, get new certifications, build new specializations as your career progresses. And so I think you don't have to say, I'm going to be an HR practitioner for my whole career and be locked into that. You can have some flexibility to try new things and try things out. And I think what goes along with that is an increased focus, not just on thinking as you enter your career about the job you want, but where you want to work. And there's a lot of differences between working in different organizations. And I think they're going to make, how happy you are in your role and also the success you have. So I think really think about, the size of different organizations. There's a big difference between working for a small startup versus, the Federal Public Service Commission. And that's going to change, the nature of your work a lot, the amount of, I guess, decision-making that you have, potentially sort of that number of people you work with, as well as your ability to specialize, is going to be very different depending on whether you're in a small organization or a large organization. Different sectors are going to approach work differently. And, if you have a passion for, healthcare versus education versus, shipbuilding, even if you're working in, HR or finance, kind of the industry you're in is going to be a big factor. And I think finding an industry that your kind of passions really align with is going to be really important. I think kind of having a passion for post-secondary education has been, a key factor in why I've, been both successful and happy in my career. And then the third is, each organization does have a culture, and thinking about the culture that matters to you for an organization and trying to find a place that really fits with what, again, your personal values and personal passions are is really important. If you find a good organization that you're a good fit with and you have success, there's going to be lots of opportunities to try new things and grow and take on projects. So I think in some ways the fit with the occupation is more important than the fit with the specific job, particularly early in your career. And then the final thing I would say is don't take the easy path. I know lots of people that have struggled to make hard decisions. For me, it was giving up a full-time permanent job and taking a term position because I thought it made sense. And what I've learned is when people have made difficult or scary choices, very rarely do they actually end up regretting it. It usually ends up being the right decision. So don't always take the easy path.
Wow, what a note to leave on, and thank you for that. And your ethical fit, right? Perhaps it's the organization versus the job or the position, but finding a place where you fit and finding yourself. That's awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thomas, talk to us. What's some advice you could give to students who just can't figure out what they want to do in the future?
First of all, I'd say it's a normal feeling. I was in the same boat. I feel like most people are. So don't feel scared about that. I would say, as we say in recruitment, is look for a career and not a job. So maybe just try to do some self-reflection and see like what you enjoy, what are you passionate about, what are your values, and then maybe map out, even if it's the next 5 years, what's going to put you in the best position to be successful within that industry. I think, especially now in the virtual world, the best way to kind of understand what it's actually like to work at these organizations is just to reach out to people and see maybe they can have a virtual coffee with you. Maybe you can meet and kind of chat about their day-to-day. I find I can tell you from my perspective, it's difficult to understand exactly what an organization culture is, exactly what it's like to actually work there without actually talking to someone and understanding, is this a fit for me, right? So I think that provides a lot of perspective, especially when you're trying to navigate exactly what industry or maybe organization makes sense for you. LinkedIn, I mean, even sending someone an email, I think you'd be surprised how many people are willing to give up half an hour of their time just to provide a little guidance, because everyone's been in that position, and everyone knows it's a tough spot to be in. So I think that's the best route.
Thank you, Thomas. That was excellent. I want to continue on this line of thinking, and I have for Lynette. Lynette, can you tell us what type of advice you would have for a student who is specifically interested in pursuing HR in management? So a specific piece of advice for this field of work.
Yes, I'd love to. And, one thing that I do want to maybe reiterate, and I know it's a little bit into the last question, but Thomas talked about, being surprised on how generous people can be with their time. And, when I was a student, I would never have had the confidence to maybe cold call somebody to ask them, can you talk to me about your role or what you do? But those conversations that I've had now as a leader, I'm more than happy to take 15, 20 minutes to meet with somebody for a virtual coffee. So I think that's a really important message. I would say that every day is a job interview, to be honest with you. A colleague of mine had shared that with me one day, and it really did stick with me. And I often, catch myself telling myself this. And, as a result, I'm always trying to put in 100%. And I think this is particularly relevant in today's virtual workplace too, because, that inventory of skills and competencies that you bring to the table, and what, managers look for in selecting the right fit for their organization. So to add to this, I'd also say that it's been my experience that, those projects or initiatives that I took on in my career, or maybe, those that I worked on as a student in university, really were those that really helped me propel my career too. So, I think it's twofold as well. Like there's the one side, in the development of those skills that I may not have acquired elsewhere, but those new challenges really push us to help us exercise muscles that we wouldn't have had the opportunity to work on. And, volunteering in with societies and the university, project work, etc. That's all going to be very relevant when you come into HR management type position too. And that satisfaction of accomplishing a task or a project that really pushed our skills, I think is really sweet too. So as an individual, I find it the reward much better if the experiences was one where I got to grow my skills. And I think too, being empathetic to oneself as well. Sometimes our projects don't always go as planned, and giving, despite having given 100%. So it maybe wasn't what my superiors wanted, or things happened differently, but being kind to yourself about it, maybe not getting the type of result I wanted on a test or a school project. So, but reflecting and learning, so that when faced with another situation, I'd be more prepared. So I think that self-reflection piece is really important in such situations. So what do you do well, what was a little tricky, and what could I have done differently? But if I could say one thing that I think will be paving the way forward in the shorter term, and that I think that students may want to explore, is the greater use of data analytics in HR, artificial intelligence. And to me, when I hire a student, I want somebody who has intermediate to advanced Excel as well, because we're operating in a reality where decisions are being made on data and facts. And to me, you know, being able to analyze and make recommendations that's based on concrete information in today's evolving business world is quite pivotal. So thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. You married together so brilliantly theory and application or practice. Thank you for that. Chris, you work in a university, students, faculty, all your stakeholders. What advice would you give students, however, who are a similar path that you have in your profession? So HR management, what type of advice would you give to students who are?
Sure, you cut out. I think I got the question. You cut out a little bit there, Nicholas. But I think a lot of HR roles and a lot of the way people kind of think about the different careers in HR kind of get divided into generalist versus specialist roles. So, you know, an HR generalist is someone who kind of works maybe for a smaller organization or in a business partner where you're expected to do a little bit of everything, versus specialists who kind of hone in on one area of HR, whether it's recruitment or labor relations or benefits administration or payroll. And I think, you know, the advice I would give is that, you know, to be successful in HR, you kind of have to be both. I think in my career, being a specialist, particularly on the labor relations side, kind of helped me get my feet off the ground and really kind of move forward in a few roles and kind of get my feet in the door. But I think eventually, you know, you really need to find opportunities to branch out of maybe the specialization that you started off with and become a bit more well-rounded in HR. And eventually, you know, every kind of role leads to a position that you're going to need to have, you know, strong sense of, you know, all the different functions of HR. Again, whether it's recruitment or LR or training, etc. And then the second thing I would say is, you know, I really do think that, you know, to Left's point, the future of HR is very much kind of data driven, and I also think it's very much OD or organizational development driven. I think you need to be prepared to have a mindset for going into HR where you're focused on sort of the type of work that supports an organizational development or kind of strategic philosophy of what HR is. You know, every HR position ultimately needs to be a strategy driven one going forward, and kind of taking that mindset early on and speaking about the work you do and the value that you bring to the organization through that lens is key and part of being successful.
Thank you, Chris. That was awesome. And forgive me for my technology here this afternoon. Thomas, want to ask you the same question. We have students that are interested in pursuing HR and management as a career in the future. What piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think I'm going to frame my response more based on just kind of business in general rather than HR. I would say, I think you just need to understand that your career is a learning process, and it's going to be kind of evolving as you go along. And I think one skill set that's really important that for new grads is just to make sure you get out of your comfort zone and your skill set and build that foundation in, is the ability, I call it raising your hand. So the idea of understanding that your opinion is just as valuable as the director, as the vice president, as the CEO, and you provide a lot of perspective that can be a lot of value to the organization, right? So it's just, it sounds scary, but it's building that confidence of putting your hand up. And every time you put your hand up and you continue to do that, you build confidence in your career. And then you create this sense that you have the ability to have very kind of transparent and direct and have difficult conversations later on in your career. So I think that's a skill set that's important. And also the ability to pick up the phone and call someone. I think we're getting away from that a bit, and that's it's a skill set in just the general business world that's so valuable. Having that personal connection, not just relying on email, but being able to relate to people and being able to communicate clearly. I think that those two pieces are what's going to be really valuable, especially as we kind of evolve and technology takes over. I think those core competencies are going to be important.
Thank you. It's about the person behind the computer, behind the text message, more so than the message itself. Thank you for that, Thomas. Nick, last but not least, talk to us, give our students some advice. They are interested in HR in management. What piece of advice would you give them?
I'm going to actually just take this a little more broadly too, and I'm going to jump back to what Lynette said a little while ago that I loved. Lynette, you said something about every day is a job interview, and this resonates with me so much as it relates to this question. So, and I just want to clarify what that means for me, because I hope students aren't scared off by that, thinking they have to leave their house every day and be on and be strategic. But to me, that's not what it means. So just to give you an example, my first job after I graduated from the Mount was a marketing assistant with a company in Dartmouth. And I was successful in the role, but I remember there was this initiative that the HR department initiated where I think, the last Friday of every month, somebody from the organization would do a presentation just on themselves. And it wasn't supposed to be related to work. I was just jumping into the work field myself. So I was still shy. I was still gaining my confidence, but something kind of hit me in that opportunity where I said, okay, I'm going to take this ridiculously seriously and I'm going to knock it out of the park. So I went up there and I did a presentation on myself and I tried to be funny. I was vulnerable. I showed some humility and everybody had a lot of fun. And I noticed it was like a switch. After I did that presentation, how people responded to me, how people treated me, and how impactful my voice was, how people asked me to engage in projects they hadn't before. And it was really like a moment for me to realize that, well, something happened there where I was bold. I took a chance and I got out of my comfort zone, and people saw something there in my character, and it made them it gave them some confidence in me, and it had absolutely nothing to do with work. So another example, years later, I was at the REC, the Rathleton Community Center, and I was talking to he was a sponsor at the time, but it was a successful local business owner. And he had invited me to this fundraising event, which was a fundraising event at night. And it just so happened to be the day before I was going off for vacation. So we were just chatting about that. And then at the end of the conversation, I said, yeah, so I'll go to that because he invited me. And then I went to the event. I had a great time, went on vacation. Then months later, this same gentleman, seeked me out to hire me for a general manager role. And I had a lot of discussions with him about that. And one of the last ones was why he was interested in engaging me. And he brought it back to that time where I said I was going to go to that event. I had a really early morning wake up to head out on a plane. And then I showed up and something spoke to him about my character there. And that stayed with him over that time. So those seem like really small things, and they are small things. So my point, I guess my feedback is, or my advice is, that never underestimate how something small like that can lead to something big. So that's what I take away from every day as a job interview, is that you just never know how your actions are going to lead to something else. And my last example of that is I was a volunteer big brother for over 6 years myself. And that led to this opportunity to make such an impact in this organization as the executive director too. So just like when I was in the world of events, where every event would lead to something else, that's my biggest advice, is never lose sight of the fact that every action you make or how you behave it might be a statement of character, and it might lead to something really, really good down the road. Sorry, Nick.
Thank you, Nick, for that. That was amazing. I enjoyed your stories. Please.
I'm going to jump in with one last tidbit based on what Thomas said about communication too. I think this is really timely as well. I think that if a really big technical piece of advice is that also don't lose sight of the fact that communication is a strategy. So there's a time to email somebody, but there's also a time to pick up the phone, or there's a time to have a face-to-face communication or a text message. It's not a templated one solution fits all. And that's unfortunately, I think we can lose sight of that with email, but we have to think about what the strategic approach to communication is all day long now, because it's just changing so quickly. Just wanted to throw that in to reiterate what Thomas said there too.
That was awesome, Nick. Thank you for that. On that note, we are getting very, very close to our time being complete here. I do want to open up the floor from our students and perhaps our faculty. Before we do that, so this is a little bit of time to do it, I have one last question I want to squeeze in really, really quickly to our panelists, and that has to do with perhaps some of the jobs that you have available for students. So we have a co-op program that's rich and vibrant. Can you tell us very, very briefly any opportunities in your organization for students in co-op, practicum, apprenticeship, or even entry-level work? And I'll start it off with Lynette.
Great, thank you so much. So the federal public service, I mean, there are such a broad and vast number of positions. I'm not sure if these your students today are graduating in the spring or will be graduating in future years, but our federal student work experience program, jobs.gc.ca, that's where we hire all our summer student placements through that mechanism. We do use the co-op program as well, and managers will post directly with universities when they're pursuing that option. But apply to the Federal Student Work Experience Program. Managers are actually going to the PSC now to get referrals from that program. So apply sooner than later. Don't wait for March or April. It would be too bad if you miss the boat. And then comes fall, post-secondary recruitment campaign posted every fall. And that's one of the mechanisms to get into, new recruit up to mid-career recruitment across public service, not just DFO.
Thank you, Lynette.
I thought I left the meeting.
No, you're here.
Mute. Sorry.
Thank you. Chris, briefly, is there any opportunities for students in your wonderful...
Yeah, I mean, as one of the largest employers in Nova Scotia, we're constantly posting jobs and have different opportunities. I think, the question a lot of people who are new in their career would have is, how do you get past that sort of experience quotient, if you don't have sort of that posted 2 years or 5 years experience that you see with a lot of jobs. And I would say if you're particularly interested in working in a university, again, to my previous point, once you're in the door, it's, there's a lot of opportunities to switch your careers, and the positions that people tend to be able to bridge kind of right from university into tend to largely be on the student experience side of things. So student recruitment, working in kind of, res life, other student affairs positions, student code, and also on the research side, working on research grants if you have particular kind of research acumen. So there's certainly opportunities, and unlike we don't have a program as well defined as the federal kind of government, but certainly kind of reach out to people in our department and take that advice to cold call, particularly if you have a real interest in working in the university sector.
Thank you, Chris. Thomas, opportunities for students, co-op, practicum, job.
Yeah, the timing's actually really good. We're actually hiring a lot right now. So if anyone has experience or an interest in recruitment, we're looking at recruitment specialists, executive recruiters, more coordinator related roles, as well as if you have kind of an aptitude for business development, some consultant positions. I'm actually hiring for my team very soon. So that's a little plug if anyone is looking. But yeah, we have a variety of roles, and we're actively looking at it as an organization.
Thank you, Thomas. And I love that students where Thomas is working. Nick, your opportunities that exist in the organization that you work for, or more broadly.
Yeah, look, I think there are hundreds of small to medium-sized nonprofit organizations across Nova Scotia that are under-resourced, and I'm sure many of them would gladly accept or have lots of opportunities to get involved. So I would just reach out to one in your community if you're interested in getting involved, maybe something that you're passionate about, and I'm sure there's an opportunity there.
Thanks, Nick. I just checked in with our coordinator, and there doesn't appear to be any questions because our panelists have been absolutely fantastic and thorough in the responses. So I do want to take a moment, in all sincerity, in all seriousness, I do want to take a moment to thank Chris, Thomas, Lynette, and Nick for joining us this afternoon. Your time is invaluable to us. Thank you. On behalf of the Department of Business and Tourism, we extend our thanks to you and as well to our students and faculty. Two very brief announcements. The first one is that this recording is being made available to our students and those who would like to watch it over the next couple of days on our department's YouTube channel. So please check that out on our social media. And lastly, to circle back with Lynette, we are incredibly privileged and honored to recently received an accreditation from our BBA's management program. I have worked along with our chair, Dr. Peter Umbercat, with and the entire team at CPHR Nova Scotia, which is the Association for Charter Professionals in Human Resources here in the province. And what that enables you students who are graduating with a major in HR is to buy knowledge exam and to go directly into the candidacy should you qualify. And that enables you to have simply 3 years of applied HR experience. And that will be the last step before you get your CPHR designation and your letters. On that note, I want to thank everybody again for joining us. We thank you, and we hope everybody has a wonderful day. And please be safe, be kind one to another. And until next time, take care. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.